This is Hannibal here with a big daily wrestling news update. The big news of the day, well, there is a little bit bigger, but Linda McMahon's attorney has confirmed to the Washington Post that she and Vince are, quote, currently separated. Of course, Linda McMahon is going to be involved in the administration of Donald Trump's presidency. She will be overseeing education. She'll be the Secretary of Education. So that's very good news for her. So what better time to further confirm her separation from Vince? Jake Paul was involved in probably the biggest viewed fight of all time last Friday night against Mike Tyson. No matter what you want to say about it, you can't argue the views. And apparently he was on Logan Paul, his brother's podcast, saying that he would like to manage Logan in WWE, which you would have to think, Jake Paul being one of the most famous people in the world right now. You could argue that Mike Tyson drew that fight, but it was Jake played a good heel, and the whole young versus old was a good storyline. It made people tune in. So I definitely think the WWE would be willing to shell out a lot of money for Jake Paul, whether he's wrestling or managing Logan. So I would expect that to happen, 100%. Apparently, Raw was taped on Monday night, and the reason that they taped was with their current deal with USA Network. They don't have to have Raws live every week. So that is the only reason it was taped. They are off for Thanksgiving as well, the wrestlers. So it's not like the old days. It's a pretty easy schedule. AEW has announced they're going to do 3 shows in a row at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City in December. At least one of them is going to be a Christmas theme show. One of them will be a Ring of Honor show. It's good that they're doing the smaller venues. And they've announced some other shows. I think they're going to a 5,000 seat kind of concert hall in Arizona as well and stuff. But it's one thing to go to a smaller venue like once, like ECW would do, but 3 days in a row, it just, to me, it takes away some of the specialness of it. But they'll have probably a packed house for those days because you only need 1,000 or so to make that venue look big. By the way, Josh Alexander, who is going to be a free agent soon, I did do an interview with him a couple weeks ago in Albany. According to Dave Meltzer, he's more than likely going to AEW than WWE when his contract expires, just for the fact that if WWE had any interest in him, he's not like the guys like Joe Hendry and Jordan Grace that they have been using from TNA with their working relationship. For whatever reason, they haven't used Josh Alexander at all. So he'll be another guy on the roster of AEW. And then, by the way, I mean, Tony Khan obviously really loves CMLL. He's probably their biggest fan. I think most American and Canadians are like me. Your average fan does not care about CMLL. He was on a podcast in Chicago today talking about his love for CMLL and wanting to put on a show at Arena Mexico, where I'm sure Arena Mexico is drawing really well these days. Tickets are nowhere near the price of American tickets, but it's just weird to me that he's in Chicago and promoting CMLL and not talking more about the people in his company that he's paying millions to, that have a greater mass appeal than the Mexican acrobats, which I think were at their peak in interest here in the 90s in WCW, when it was still new and like the Lucha Libre wasn't as overexposed as it is now. I mean, some of the flips and stuff are impressive, but there's too much of it in wrestling now. And I don't know. I'm glad he likes that relationship with CMLL, but I find it's a turnoff from watching the product. The other interesting thing about the Tyson fight, Alex, is someone told me today that he's announced he's giving his $20 million purse to his wife, which the interesting thing, that's very sweet and everything, but the interesting thing about that is that also because he hasn't been the most straight living guy in his life and has had many altercations and so forth. Is he also saying that to avoid potential lawsuits popping up by money hungry people everywhere? I think the most recent one, which I know wasn't his fault, and I think it was thrown out, was when that guy in the airplane pissed him off enough that he actually beat him up a little bit. I think that was only a year or two ago. It was eventually dropped, but there's all kinds of stupid little stuff that you could see people going after Tyson for. Do I think it was a fixed fight? I don't have any comment on it. It appears that there was definitely some either unwritten rules or untalked about rules in it that the commission may have put in place that are not public, but it was a successful event. The doctor says, I'm going to love the steakhouses here in Wichita. I can imagine. I was hanging out with a couple cows earlier today in a field here, checking out the scenery. I am going to be wrestling on a big event in Philadelphia coming up in May, so I'm going to be here doing a bit of a training camp, also a change of scenery from Canada. So I've liked it here so far in the almost 24 hours that I've been here. Had a great flight here. Did a review of the burger I ate in Chicago last night. Speaking of Chicago, CMLL is getting more publicity than ever right now from Tony Khan. So they must just absolutely love him. Same with New Japan, but CMLL, although it's popular right now, New Japan is at its all-time lowest in popularity, legit. But Tony Khan seems to not only still be pushing the hell out of New Japan and hiring, like one of the reasons that it's down is he's hiring all of their better wrestlers for AEW. He's still sharing them, but the business there is lower than ever. And Kenny Omega has even returned to New Japan, even though he's an AEW contracted wrestler. So Tony Khan definitely loves them. But to me, it's like, why keep pushing New Japan down our throats? It's a company nobody's interested in right now. The last peaks that it had was when AJ Styles was champion. And by the way, I did pin him 2 times in one night in 2014 when he was still IWGP champion. So you could call me the uncrowned champion. And when the Young Bucks and Omega were having their latest run in New Japan before AEW went in and took over. But anyways, I don't get it, but it's his money. He can do whatever he wants. But the company will be around as long as he wants. But as I reported on the weekend, their next TV deal, which starts in 2025 and could be as short as 3 years, if they don't turn things around in the next 2-ish years, they're not going to be getting as good of a TV deal next time because everything's dropping. They just hit another all-time low for Rampage on Friday, but it seems to be like they want to keep going down that same path of CMLL, New Japan, wrestlers being advertised and not showing up at live events and so forth. Hopefully it changes. They are going to smaller arenas. Hopefully that changes the atmosphere rather than going to these 20,000 seat arenas that are 10% full. Anyways, have a great day. Please give this video a thumbs up.